All right, let's turn to New York now, where Governor Cuomo taking time out to promote his new memoir. The book, All Things Possible, Setbacks and Successes in Politics and Life, focusing on the governor's failed marriage, his failed gubernatorial run against George Pataki, and other political pitfalls and successes. And while the governor is gearing up for the midterm elections, and obviously his re-election bid, he also has the Moreland headache hanging over his head, with U.S. Attorney Preet Bharara breathing down his neck. Now, we also could talk about Tappan Zee funding, approval ratings down. There's a lot of challenges ahead of him, but what I wanted to get to is, you served under this mayor. You've been involved in state Democratic politics. People may remember last year you had a well-publicized editorial that you wrote about cities like Syracuse and others that economically were suffering. It didn't matter if it was a D or an R in front of them. How have the past 4 years been for you or for Syracuse under this administration?
Well, it's been a mixed bag. There have been ups, there have been downs. Clearly the city of Buffalo, the governor has expended extraordinary resources on Buffalo, and Buffalo is coming back, and I'm happy for Buffalo. But the issue for me is there's Rochester, there's Syracuse, there's Utica, there's Albany, there's Yonkers. And what we need is fundamental change of the policies that have put us in these precarious positions, and that is very politically difficult to do.
Is this concerns over like unfunded mandates, the pension reform, is that the biggies?
Those are some of them. Deteriorating infrastructure, lack of infrastructure financing, thinking about long term, and the problem becomes that those are policies that need to be addressed in a meaningful way with a long-term vision, and they don't really lend themselves to election cycles. And you have a governor who is strategically brilliant, does things when he wants to on his own time schedule, on his own time frame, and I'm just not sure that Syracuse or Rochester or Yonkers can wait. And why do people in Buffalo, why are they more deserving than people in Syracuse? They're not.
You know, I've heard the Utica mayor, and we spoke to real concerns over potential bankruptcy. Nobody says Detroit's looming around the corner, but you know the books of Syracuse better than anybody. With what has been, some would say, gimmickry here, pushing basically some of those debt obligations down the road, how much do you look down the road and say, if something doesn't change, we've got a real big problem here? How far away are you?
Well, I've made really tough decisions to prevent that from happening. So we've closed a firehouse. We closed a senior center. We've had the smallest public employment workforce in modern history. That includes the fewest number of police officers and firefighters. Those are really tough decisions. So it gets really tough to hear people from the state in Albany saying, you guys need to make tough decisions, and if you don't want to have a fire engine on every corner, then you should just tell your mayor that. We don't have that. There's no fat in municipal government anymore, and the problem is that when you have these state policies aimed towards economic development, which we all believe in, but when you don't address the fundamentals of a government. So you could say you're not going to pay taxes for 10 years, but if I can't deliver them water, I can't plow the roads, or I can't keep them safe, then is anybody really going to stay there or much less expand and hire jobs? I don't think so.
Is it dirty secret this long term, you think, that it's not a one-size-fits-all across the board? We've always talked that on social issues, this governor's been very progressive, but on fiscal issues, close your eyes, you could have Governor Pataki, or not a lot would have changed. But is it a little bit more that, depending on which pocket you are in the state, you've done okay? That, no. For example, casinos are going to be a big thing for the Hudson Valley or in certain other parts of the state. But does it matter by industry, or is it really?
I think it's fair to take a broader look and look at some of the specific decisions that were made that really did not work for local governments. There was a pension crisis. The stock market went down. Local governments' contribution to pay for the pension rights of their employees went up. They were screaming, rightly so. Instead of dealing with the fundamental problems, the legislature, the Senate, the Assembly, and led by the governor, decided that the localities should borrow money to pay their pension obligations. It's a terrible idea. Yeah. Guess who decided not to do that? And guess who's going to benefit to the tune of $10 to $15 million a year over the course of the next decade because she made the decision not to do that? That's what got her into the fight with the governor in the first place. You've got to make a political decision that you will do the right thing and then explain it politically rather than do everything short term.
But that's the hardest thing, isn't it, explaining this politically? I mean, you look at even Westchester County, they're doing that exact thing. They're borrowing, as it relates to the pensions here, talking about kicking the can down the road, but that's almost the premise of the campaign. Look at how I've been able to keep property taxes, not even go down, just freeze them because I've done all the following. Try and explain in 30 seconds about the pension problems you're looking down the road. The public doesn't want to seem to consume that because you can't put it in a soundbite, right?
It's like Ebola. It's like things
Ebola,
like gay
they
marriage.
can get a little
no,
bit
no.
more.
No,
Yeah,
no. There
I
is a
disagree.
tendency, and it's media-driven by you
Oh,
journalists.
you too. Don't even try it now.
To reduce things, to simplify and make them into morality plays, as Dominic just did, and the world don't work that way. And it's when you have to make tough choices, close a firehouse, don't borrow to pay your pension costs. There are repercussions.
Pshaw. This is complicated stuff. It's not, a lot of people, harumph to you too. A lot of people have trouble balancing their own checkbook. So trying to figure out how a state budget works, a state budget that's looking 10 years out in some cases, and figuring out where their revenue is going to come from. I mean, the idea of, that's why the meme that we've heard about, well, how you do a credit card and manage your own finances, don't borrow more than you have or more than you can pay back, makes sense to a lot of people because it works on their own level.
Do you think the public gets it, or do when they come to your office and they complain, after you explain it to them, they still get it? They say, no, you're the one who closed the firehouse, not the governor, you did it. Do they get why?
They do get why, and here's what I will tell you. When you look across the board at who do people trust, who do voters trust, they trust their municipal officials. And why do they trust their municipal officials? Because we have to tell them the truth, or as close to the truth as some of us may get. But that's also part of our role, is to say when others are not telling the truth or not being candid, saying, hey, wait a second, that's not the complete story, Assembly, Senate, Governor, Comptroller.
I think that's very optimistic. If you look at the way in which the gubernatorial race is being run now, there's a big issue facing the next governor. You got a $7 billion one-time surplus. Do you use it for operating expenses and tax cuts, or do you put it into capital? Can't get an answer from either one of them.
Nope.
And the press hasn't insisted on it. The voters don't insist on it. Yet it's exactly the kind of decision about long-term finances.
Media can ask, doesn't mean we're going to get an answer, as we've learned here for 4 years. So it's a little easier said than done. Media ask, please. The only thing we can get conversations now has to do with what's in a book. All right, when we come back here, we're going to head out to Florida and have a look at the Fangate scandal. I can't make this stuff up here. In a debate last night, Governor Rick Scott wouldn't take the stage until the guy on your screen, the Silver Fox, Charlie Chris, I love that nickname, would or wouldn't use his fan. I'll explain all this when we come back.